let's share this live stream out there. TDD time. Let's see how far we get with this. Thumbs up. Alright, let's tweet that out. We'll give people a few minutes to show up. Let me post this in the Shifty Coders Slack as well. Some people like to watch from in here too. Kaboom. Yes, remove. More. Blueprint. Yay. Alright, cool. We'll give people just a second to show up like last time. And I'll edit this down once YouTube processes it. Alright, let's bring this up. And like I said, I'll wait just a second while people show up. I think what I'll do here is let's just go ahead and make a new, I'll just get this kind of set up while people are attending. We'll do a blueprint test. Put that in the wrong spot. Whoops. And I think I'm namespacing these. I can't remember. Yes, I am. Alright, cool. So this is some kind of feature test, whatever. We're not going to use the Lexer, and this is good enough. There we go. Cool. That should get started. And yeah, there we go. Cool. Alright, looks like a few people are showing up. I'm going to wait just another minute to make sure everything's good. Do I have the audio levels right? Yes. Okay, good. Give people just a sec to show up. For those that are here, let me know you're seeing everything okay in the comments, if you will. And we'll go from there. We'll just wait just another 10 or 15 seconds. Like I said, I'll cut this down. Normally the first 3 minutes are like me sharing everything. I need to get better about scheduling like a live event so I can set it out there beforehand, let people kind of queue up for a minute. That way I don't have to pause forever. Alright. Well, let's get started. Okay, so before I was working on everything. Okay, good. Yeah, looks like everything's good. Okay, so before, we were spiking, and a lot of these live streams honestly have been spiking for two reasons. One, it's a little hard to gain a lot of momentum on a brand new project like this while you're live streaming. I'm still pretty new to it. I'm not a pro just yet. I'd kind of, and I wanted to keep them also short, so we could tackle kind of one thing. So, ideally I wanted to keep them about 20 minutes. Most of them are 30. I think the first few were 40. So on top of which, today is probably going to be kind of the last live stream just because I'm getting ready to travel to Laracon AU, where I'm going to keep working on this and hopefully release a beta. So for those reasons, today I wanted to focus on maybe a little more testing because that's something I've been doing behind the scenes that a lot of people, or well, no one has really been seeing but me. So what I want to do is kind of demonstrate that process that I've been doing. So I think it's been pretty easy to follow the final product, but again, I think it's important to look and see how the testing goes and not just kind of the spike part. And when I'm saying spike, a lot of the times I'm talking about really just taking some code and trying it out, seeing how it works, just kind of hacking on stuff, but it's untested. And it's probably not the final version of the code either. Prime example is this blueprint file. This blueprint file has been kind of the test runner or the application runner, if you will. And eventually this will probably be an rsyn command. But the point is that this is a little bit ugly, particularly these parts. There's a couple things I didn't like about this. First of all, this would be more or less untestable, kind of in its static nature. Ideally, these things would be injected or some kind of way in which it's going to be a little easier to test this. Something else is just the general design of this was really ugly. So beyond just the static bit, I have like this parser parse, lexer lex, generator generate, super silly stuff. And again, it works from a static capacity, so that's hard to argue with. So nothing against this style per se, but there's other things I've mentioned, for example, too, like the generator. Again, super hard to test these new up things. Like it'd be a lot nicer if there were ways to inject this or register these generators in a way that kind of makes it easier to work with, but also to the point of yesterday's video, make it extensible. Ideally, people in the open source community are going to be contributing to this project and making their own generators. Again, like we said, maybe a Nova generator, right, to generate the Nova components for like a Laravel admin section. So again, while these basic MVC ones are something I want to supply and kind of have be in core, there's all sorts of other generators people might want to make off of these, off of this kind of, robust definition of your models and your controllers, right? So that's what I want to TDD today. Long story short is I basically want to drive this out to be something else. And really what I think I'm going to make this be is right now just kind of like a blueprint God class, if you will, but it's one that creates some state and remembers things like the abstract syntax tree and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to take a bit of content and it's going to parse that. It's going to hold on to the tokens. It's going to generate a registry out of it and all these different types of things that kind of happen. Now, I don't want it to necessarily do kind of everything in one step, so I'm still going to keep this broken out aspect because I think there's some benefit there, but I just kind of want to see what that looks like in one class instead of these like single classes with single, same name methods. So again, that kind of lets me know these things, they're kind of weak classes. They don't really hold their weight, and it doesn't make sense for me to kind of leverage multiple of these that are going to be very similar. So to drive this out, I'm going to make this blueprint test. So this is down here in my test bit, and I'm going to make a blueprint file, right? So I'm going to turn this into some kind of object. So just the way this will look, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but basically what this will look like is some kind of blueprint, runner. We're going to make a new blueprint here. We're going to send in whatever we would need to right here. And then we're going to do things that just make a little more sense, like blueprint, parse, right? I mean, blueprint should know what its parser is. It should know what its analyzer is. It should know which generators to run. So again, we'll kind of see how this looks, but that's the goal really is to put these things under blueprint because it's kind of its responsibility in my mind. And I don't need, 7 or 8 of these different classes. I'm just going to see what it looks like all under one. So again, some people might design that a little bit different, but after kind of spiking on this for a bit, it just kind of seemed that I only have some really simple methods and they could live under a blueprint file. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is set up a subject, and let's just kind of get this full screen here. And what I like to do is just call things subject, and really this is just the subject under test, right? And what that's kind of shorthand for, so I don't have to think of like ways to name things. I could call this blueprint, of course, but I just like using subject. So, and let's go ahead and add a field for that. And it's a blueprint file, which doesn't exist. So kind of the first rule of TDD is only write enough of a test to demonstrate a failure. So in this case, PHP Storm's kind of letting me know that I'm already going to have a failure simply because this wouldn't necessarily load anything up. There's no such thing as blueprint. So let's just go ahead and make a test case just to get a better version of that. So we can just say at test, and we'll just say public function. It parses, let's say it calls the parser or something like that. So it parses content. We'll just do something simple like this for now. And we'll say this subject parse. And again, this isn't the final test. I'm just kind of demonstrating that this is going to blow up with the fact that no blueprint class exists. So let's get this moving here. Let's make a blueprint file, and let's put this under, I think I call this blueprint. I feel like PHP Storm never generates those when you're in the other namespace, so let's just do it by hand. Let's do a PHP class. We'll call it blueprint, and here it is, namespace blueprint, blah, blah, blah. And let's bring our test back side by side. We should be able to import that now. All right, cool, undefined method parse. So let's go ahead and add that method. Good, okay, so that's just kind of a really quick version of some super simple TDD there. Just the fact that any error counts. Okay, so let's kind of go back and reference our spike. So really what we're doing is we're passing in some contents to parse. And what this is going to do is ultimately call the underlying parser. So we could do a couple different things here. We could keep this parser, or we could make this inside of Blueprint. This is kind of that static parse, and this is really, really simple stuff. And I think honestly, like, I don't even think we use these anymore. So I guess the point I'm getting at is like this code could probably just live under parse and really not be that big of a deal. I don't know when I would ever swap out the parser. I think some people might think to inject that, but I don't think I need that. So because of that, I'm actually going to go, I do have a test for the parser. I'm actually going to go back down here and test and pull these out. Let's do that. Cool. So let's take this and let's update these tests. I shouldn't need that YAML parser anymore. All right, cool. Let's update these to instead do this. Yes. All right, let's expand everything and let's see if we can get a quick win here with all those, and we'll say this subject parse. All right, and now what's wrong? Blueprint. Oh, it's a void method. Okay, that's not a problem. Let's run this. Okay, great. Null doesn't expect or doesn't match array. Okay, so basically I just took the parser tests, put them in Blueprint to collapse them, and now this should allow me to kind of jump ahead a little bit and take this parser code and bring it in here. And instead of this preprocess command, I think for now I'm just going to inline this and take this content, and let's just do content equals content, change this to content, and we don't even need that anymore. So this is content. Yay. All right, let's see if this ends up working now. Let's just return null here so that old test fails. Yay, look at that. Okay, so we already had those tests, so that was actually pretty simple. So let's do this. Let's start making the code continue to work. So what I'm going to do is now, in Blueprint, I'm going to new up. I should be able to pull this out and make a new blueprint. And I shouldn't need this parser anymore, nor do I need those inline parsers, although, no, I don't have any other parsers. Just making sure I didn't have any. I wanted to keep that folder structure. And now we're going to parse contents, and we'll get tokens. And if this was a successful refactor, everything should still work. So let's try it. PHP blueprint. Did it run? Seems like it ran. Look at that, minus the formatting, everything's still good here. So we've got those same things yesterday. We got the post model being done. Here's all the bits. So good, still working. Okay, good. I think that's a successful refactor there towards this blueprint bit. I heard the comments popping, so let me go check this out. Evening, yes, hello. Everything's coming across, good. TDD, yes, yes, this is awesome. Okay, yeah, TDD. Okay, so we did, I guess, technically take a couple shortcuts there just because I already had this test existing. So let's push on by writing some more stuff for things I don't have tests for. So for example, that generator. So that's kind of the next bit. So using this blueprint, oh my gosh, can't type today, blueprint. So the lexer is going to be next. So let's kind of get a feel for what the lexer does. And right now we just have this model lexer. Okay, and the model lexer gets an analyze on there. So I think we're going to do the same thing here in Blueprint. So let's just do that. And And let's drive this out the way we would want. Okay, so I think what I would want now is a test for this lexer. So let's say public function it lexes models for now. And let's just kind of get this going and figure out how best we might be able to test this. Okay, so what I want to do here is really just say something like this, assert null, just to really be pedantic this time about doing TDD. And we'll say this subject lex. Lex is kind of weird. I'm gonna continue to call it analyze for now. Analyze. I don't know which one it is. Okay, cool. So we'll do analyze, and then it should receive. For right now, we're going to say it should receive the tokens. And there's not going to be any tokens, so we're going to need to initialize that right now with just an array. Let's do that. Cool. Okay, so TDD, simplest thing to make it fail. So we're going to get a failure now call to undefined analyze. We can fix that with PHP Storm. We got the array of tokens now, nice, and good. So now we're passing. Now we're obviously not done, so we need to figure out how the way in which we would want to test this. So I think for an empty set of tokens, I would want the lexer to give me back an empty syntax tree of, what do you want to call it here? Of just models and controllers top level, right? I think that's what I would want it to do. So let's say analyze, we'll change these from it. So we'll say analyze returns top level tokens for empty tokens, or how about that? It returns top level, or let's just say default structure or tree maybe? I haven't decided on what I want to call this yet. Naming things is hard. I'm going to call it tree for now. Okay, so I think what we want to do now here is instead assert same on this, and what I would want this to be is a little more like this, where it's going to be like models is going to just be an empty, and controllers is going to be empty. Cool. And let's see how that works. Okay, good. So we don't see that this is identical or that it's run that way. So we could probably lighten that up just a bit with equals, because I think same would work here for the defaults, but it might not work in the future because they won't be the exact same memory address. So we'll tone it down with equals here. And let's push this just a bit farther. Okay, so I think the simplest thing to do to pass, just from a TDD perspective, would just be return an empty bit here, right? So just return this same guy. And I know that seems silly, but this forces me to do the actual work here to make this, I could jump ahead by just going to the lexer and copying and pasting this, but I don't want to do that. So let's push on a little bit more from this. And I think now what I would want to do is, ideally I would want to be able to register these, but let's not worry about that too much right now. Let's pass in some tokens for a model from like one of our previous setups, right? So this is probably a little bit extra here, but let's do this. Let's pass in some tokens from a model, and we'll just say something like analyze returns tree for models. How about that? For model. Cool. Okay, so what I would expect this time is if I pass in some model tokens, and let's get the proper structure here. Then I'm going to expect a model back. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting. I feel like I'm testing the model Lexer all over again. Whoops. So this already is Lexing. You know what I think I want to do instead is I actually want to register. I want this to be a little dumber, actually. I don't want to have to test at like a really high level here. Like right here, I'm testing all the way through. I think what I'd rather do is just to kind of demonstrate what I'm at here for interest of time. Let's say what I'd really like to do here is have like this for each of like the registered Lexers. And let's actually just make this real code for a second. I'm going to comment it out, but just so we get the idea of where I'm heading in case I run out of time. What I want to do ultimately is really set this up where I can say something like Lexer analyze and send it the tokens. And this kind of does, as we saw over here, it really just does that kind of array merge with the registry. So, and registry is not set up just yet, but basically I would want it to do this. And in order for it to do this, it kind of needs like the default Lexers, right? So it's like this dot Lexers. And if I add this field, this would just be like an array of Lexers. Now the question is, what are these Lexers? You know, do these get built up by something else, like a service provider, or in this, am I going to build up the Blueprint thing and inject some of these things? Do I register even the basic Lexers automatically, maybe in my version of Blueprint? That could be cool. So yeah, maybe I do something like that. Let's see what that looks like. So yeah, let me comment all this back out. True TDD here. But it helped to kind of think that through for a second. So let's go back, because I want to keep the model Lexer on its own and its own tests. I don't want to start copying those here. I think the parser's okay because it's pretty much just one method and calls YAML. So I think it's okay to kind of encapsulate that and bury those details. But I'm not a big fan for returning the default bit here. Well, the default one I think is actually good, but I don't like this test. So let's redo this. Let's do something like this. Let's say public function analyze uses registered Lexers to analyze tokens. There we go. Cool. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a mock. All right, so let's make a Lexer, and I'm going to make a mockery mock. All right, and what I'm going to do here is, let's say Lexer expects to receive analyze with tokens. So I'll send those back, and it's going to return, in this case, some kind of array. So I'll just do something like, let's just say, we'll say mock Lexer. Real simple, doesn't matter. And let's initialize this with some tokens and something, you know, that makes a little sense. So this is just going to be like tokens are here. Cool. And then now what I want to do is I'm going to call this subject add Lexer. Or I don't like add. Let's do register Lexer. All right. And let's send it the Lexer. And then, well, you know what? This is enough to fail. So let's be good here. Oh, I forgot to wrap this in a little test annotation. Test. There we go. Okay, so no register lexer. Let's bring this into the fold. It's definitely not a mockery interface, so I think for now we'll just call that lexer. But I'll probably make a contract for this later, and that's easy to do, and just put the contract here. But for now, let's push on just in the interest of time. I want to cut this off in a few minutes. And then now what I can do instead is say this analyze, this subject analyze tokens, right? And I'm going to expect, or well, this assert equals, and I would expect that this is going to equal that mock bit, right? So I think what I'd want to demonstrate here is a couple things. This is my opportunity to demonstrate, first of all, that that defaults correctly, and it merges the one I did. So in this case, mock lexer, and this will just be lexer. So good demonstration here that this is going to kind of overwrite whatever was in there before, well, not overwrite, but it's going to append the array or merge with the array that's already going to exist, and that these should continue to be defaults. So this should definitely blow up. They are not the same. Okay, good. And then I would definitely expect this lexer bit to fail here in just a second. So this should allow me to uncomment a majority of this code that I had before. So let's do this. Let's systematically uncomment these pieces. So let's uncomment this first and drop that in. So that's our default registry, always going to be that way. Okay, we still get a failure. All right, so let's uncomment our lexer code, but I'm gonna actually dump out this bit. I'm just gonna say registry. I'm just toying with this on purpose here. So let's call it lexer analyze and analyze. Can't spell that today. Token. All right, and let's comment that and uncomment these other lines. And we'll return the registry. So I'm intentionally kind of not tokens. I'm intentionally kind of not merging this. So I just want to see if the test pushes on. Okay, so expected that, actual was this. Okay, so what are we missing here? Analyze tokens. Okay, so register lexer never did anything, so it's not looping over any of this. Okay, good. So let's say this lexers, and we're going to append the lexer. Okay, great. Look, now we're flipped, right? We're getting models, controllers, but the lexer is there. So we're missing models and controllers. Good, that's that array merge. So let's pop that off. And that should be lexer, copy paste bug. Run that and we're green. Awesome, look at that. Okay, so what we've done here is actually introduced kind of what I wanted to get at. And it's going to be real simple to basically just copy this code for the generators as well, right? And so what this is going to force me to do is actually in Blueprint, I'm going to need to kind of register these kind of automatically. Now I'm going to have to change those files, but the point is that I'm going to register whenever I build up Blueprint, wherever that ends up being here, or an artisan command, or a service provider, I'm going to register by default, the model lexer and the controller lexer and all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm going to be able to register new instances of those, and that's going to work kind of like dependency injection, if you will. But I don't have to get some kind of service container or anything like that, just because Blueprint might be standalone, so I'm intentionally trying to be lightweight with these things. I don't want to have to, use Pimple or Laravel or whatever it is, all the different things you can use for kind of dependency injection. Again, nothing against it, but if I have to new up a model lexer here, that's not the end of the world in my mind, because this is probably going to have, a single full integration test that just demonstrates I call this Blueprint file and I get these files generated. So anyways, I'm going to comment that back out. Let's take just a few more minutes and do the same thing now, just a little quicker. I'm going to copy paste this and do the same thing for the generators. So let's just copy paste this whole thing. Now, the difference is the generators probably aren't going to return anything. So we'll really just be doing an expectation for those. So let's say generate, there's really no empty thing that it's going to do, so I won't actually need this test. So we're really just going to register this bit here. So let's just say generate uses registered generators to, what do you want to call it? Generate code. Cool. Okay, so that should get, what does it get? It gets the registry, basically. And so let's call that, so it won't be tokens anymore, so let's just change all this. So let's do just these code occurrences, I think. And let's do registry for now, or tree. I think I've been calling it tree. I just want to be specific. And this will be generate. And this isn't going to return anything. So the expects is really all I'm going to have here. And I'm really just going to straight call it. And so this will be register generator. And instead of this lexer, let's call this generator. Okay, so the generator is another mock. It's going to get a tree of, models, or, let's call this branch code attributes. There we go. All right, and then register generator doesn't exist, so let's just move a little quicker here. I'm going to generate that. It's not going to be the Mockery interface. There's our generator. And now we're going to get generate, and that doesn't exist, so let's do it too. And let's just move these a little closer to home. All right, cool. And now we should be able to run this and see some explosions. Good. Okay, so method generate branch from should have been called exactly once, but called 0 times. And just real quick, I think inside this test case, I'm using this method here. This is really important. This is a little trait that makes sure that Mockery is getting torn down and verifying your assertion counts, because otherwise this would actually be considered a risky test because I don't have any PHP unit assertions inside of here. There's no like this assert. And so because of that, you want to make sure to use that trait. So it's something I stumbled upon a few months back. That this would run and it would verify everything, but it would generate like a risky test or a warning because there were no assertions. So that kind of helps. Okay, final thing here. Let's generate this. So we should make this run. This is considered a failure. It never called generate the way we wanted it to. So let's just copy pasta our code from before. And we're going to change all these instances of lex to lexer to generator. All right, so all the registered generators, it's going to get the tree, not true, tree, and it's going to do the tree. And this actually doesn't merge anything, to be honest. It really just calls all of them. So there's probably a cooler map way we could do that, or walk way we could do all that. But we'll leave this alone for now. So the generator has an analyze method. That's not true. It has a generate method, and it's going to use the tree. Cool. So let's make generators. We're going to add that field, and we're going to make that an array by default. And let's just pop this guy here. Generators. Generate. And we're green. Okay, cool. So let's just recap this and then we'll shut it down for the day. So I basically took the code that used to be in here and we updated this to eventually, I'm going to need to register some stuff like we saw, but eventually we basically have the ability now to analyze the tokens and then finally to generate those tokens. And it might seem a little silly that I'm doing kind of these things separately. Like again, you might think, okay, well, why not just, call blueprint run or execute or something like that, or build? And you could, But I kind of like breaking these up just because I think there's an opportunity. Again, you have to think about the extensibility of this as an open source project. This is something I normally would call Yagni on, but again, as an open source project, I want to make sure that there's hooks in here for people to be able to do different things with Blueprint. So maybe people just want to use the Blueprint parser, right? Maybe they just want to use this tokenizer. Um, maybe they don't want to generate their own things. So this is going to allow them to pull in this repo and use aspects of it as they see fit. Whereas if I just did a build and it did everything, I don't really have an opportunity to kind of separate those. So again, this Blueprint parser, for all we know, could be its own sub package, its own component that gets included, much like Laravel has Illuminate support and all those types of things. So again, just don't know where it is, so I want to build it with a little bit of extensibility in mind. Again, more so than I might normally, but this is probably as far as I'm going to go. So, and I like this much better. I think this registry is going to be nice, and again, this could end up being a service provider that gives you a Blueprint thing back to make even this code more testable. So we'll go from there. I'm going to fill in the blanks on these myself and turn these into, again, not being, for example, static classes like we saw before, but now being something you can new up, and now maybe it has a little bit of state itself. Or who knows, I might just add the contract and keep them generic. There's really no reason for the Lexer to remember anything or have any state. It's already tested in isolation. So yeah, it could be cool really to, instead of doing this new thing, you could just as easily just change this to that and have it all work. So we'll see. We'll see how far I get there. It might just be a registry of class names, much like the the config app PHP file where you just register providers in an array. Hey, look at that. Again, grokking the framework. I like doing stuff like that. There's really no reason to come up with your own fancy design pattern. Just use the things that are, kind of familiar to you, right? And maybe there's like a register Lexers thing where I just push in a whole bunch. Or again, maybe those get sent in with Blueprint. Hopefully that helped out just to kind of see how I go back and TDD. I'll comment the code out that maybe I wrote if I'm going to keep the code like we saw, or if it's brand new, then I'll just start with a test and I try to practice that TDD, as much as I can, where I write the test, make sure it fails, make it pass, do it again. So good little behind the scenes there. Thanks you all for watching live. Like I said, this is probably going to be the last one until it actually launches or the beta's out, and that'll be more showing examples of how to use it. So I really appreciate everyone's feedback. Definitely the buzz helped me kind of, do these and excited to share these. So hopefully when this comes out in the next few weeks, people will find it useful. And like I said, maybe all this extensibility will get used in very interesting ways I can't even think of yet. So thanks again, and I will see you all next time.